Part 114. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1140. Latest website. Lu Feng was very dissatisfied with the morning's negotiation. Not only did he not get any advantage, but if this cooperation continued, he would suffer a huge loss. Of course Huan Yuewei understands what Lu Feng needs now. Because he understands it so well, he is not worried at all that Lu Feng dares to leave. He leaves Jiangsu and goes to negotiate with other provinces. It may only take a few months to negotiate, and the local it is even less clear what the relationship between state-owned enterprises and the province is. Now Huan Yuewei wants Lu Feng to hold his nose and admit all this, not only to embarrass him, but more importantly to show it to others. Now half of the city knows about the relationship between Lu Feng and Huan Yuewei. Lu Feng will bear these? Just kidding. In the private room of the cafeteria, Lu Feng chased after him. Several people on the scene said a few polite words, and Lu Feng took the opportunity to sit down. At the dinner table, Lu Feng was the first to speak. I know that the province is not well off, and the Post and Telecommunications Group has been losing money year after year, but our life is not easy. Since we are cooperating, we need to show sincerity from both sides. What we just talked about is really I can't agree to it. The person in charge of the Department of Commerce sat next to him and said, this matter is indeed a bit difficult for Mr. Lu. Secretary Huang, what do you think? I think the fact that you came here to talk means it's not embarrassing. If it was, you wouldn't be sitting here. Huan Yuewei ate his meal expressionlessly. You can't be unreasonable. Our business is business, and we have to take care of the company's feelings. Lu Feng poured himself a glass of wine and said, I'll toast you. You have to let me go back and make an explanation. Otherwise there is no way to explain this. Huan Yuewei clinked the wine glasses, looked at Lu Feng and said, the explanation is yours. Why should you turn your problem into my problem? If you are doing business, you don't have to buy it if it is too expensive, just like I am smelting steel. The group seems to think that if our steel is expensive, people will not buy it. If others don't buy it, I will have to lower the price, otherwise the efficiency of the whole factory will not be good. Do you know what market economy is? Lu Feng saw that he was going to die if he left the market here. He looked unhappy and put down the wine glass in his hand. Since you are going to come to this game of life and death, don't blame him. You're welcome, brother. Lu Feng didn't speak for the rest of the meal. He just ate silently. After finishing the meal, he stood up and left without saying a word. He didn't say hello to anyone. The other people at the dinner table looked at each other, and they all looked at each other. Everyone originally thought that Lu Feng would have to persuade Huan Yuewei for a long time, but he seemed to have lost hope in an instant. This sudden change made people a little uncomfortable. Huan Yuewei also wondered in his heart, why did he feel like this kid was on the verge of death if he just made things difficult for him? Don't worry about this matter. If you don't have butcher Zhang, why do you still have to eat pigs with hair on them? Negotiating business is always a tug of war. Ask for a high price, and pay it back on the spot. Huan Yuewei acted very calmly and said to the crowd, negotiation, some psychological warfare is normal, we'll talk about it in a few days. Huan Yuewei thinks that it is relatively easy to handle Lu Feng. Back at the hotel, Lu Feng felt quite unhappy. He was still a little confused about Huan Yuewei's changes. Even if he wasn't given a discount, he shouldn't be treated like this normally. Lu Feng sat on the sofa and thought about the doorway. He had no idea until night. He turned off the light and lay on the bed. He suddenly realized something while half asleep and half awake. Is this considered a convert's fanaticism? Lu Feng sat up and muttered to himself. In an instant, everything became clear. Huan Yuewei wanted to cut off from him. The outside world said everything. If he wanted to cut off the relationship, he had to be more ruthless to himself, so ruthless that outsiders would think it was a bit too much. In the dim room, Lu Feng struck a match, and the flame illuminated his face, and then lit a cigarette. The scarlet cigarette butt seemed to burn a hole in the night. Lu Feng quickly thought about the relationship between this. It felt a little desolate. In any case, the two of them have gone through ups and downs, but now they have to face such a choice. Lu Feng took a long puff of cigarette, feeling quite mixed in his heart. There are fewer and fewer people around him, and life is like a lively party. As the party ends, people leave him one after another. Of course, this was just a moment of emotion. After the emotion, Lu Feng understood that Huang Youwei was once a businessman. He knew very well about Jia Feng's current situation, otherwise he would not have offered such harsh conditions, just because he knew, Lu Feng had no choice. Faced with such a person who knew him well, Lu Feng had no other choice but to suffer a loss. Lu Feng thought about it over and over, but it seemed that he had no solution at all. Now he had to ask for help from others. The clock on the wall was ticking, and Lu Feng got out of bed and lit a cigarette again. From the perspective of supply and demand, he was currently being manipulated by others, but from another perspective, he might have a chance. In the final analysis, Huang Youwei still hopes that domestic science and technology will develop better. His purpose in this matter is clear. Since he wants to take advantage of this juncture to pressure himself, then don't blame yourself for being rude and directly ruining it. It was already 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, and half a pack of cigarettes had been smoked. Lu Feng thought about it clearly and went back to bed to rest. The next day I slept until noon before waking up. I washed up lazily and had lunch. Then I called Zhu Lidong and asked if there were any business activities in the area. I would also take advantage of these 2 days to participate in it. Zhu Lidong said that there will be a high-end financial gathering here in 2 days. They are all domestic business tycoons. I heard that it is an event for investing in foreign assets and doing asset allocation. It is led by Shanghai Securities Company and jointly organized by several major securities companies. Okay, get me a ticket and I'll go see it too, Lu Feng said. Mr. Lu, how are the talks in Jiangsu going? Zhu Lidong asked. Guangdong may have something to show for it, but the specific situation is still under negotiation and cannot be discussed before the year. Let's not talk about it anymore. The company won't be running anymore. Let's just dissolve it. Everyone can divide the money and go home and have children, Lu Feng said casually. When Zhu Lidong heard this, he thought he had answered the wrong call, and asked hurriedly, is it Mr. Lu? It's me. If you receive some calls from here, just follow what I said just now, you know, Lu Feng ordered. Oh, I know. Although Zhu Lidong didn't know what was going on here, he had already gotten used to it over the years. Huang Youwei spent the whole morning waiting for Lu Feng, but he couldn't come either left or right. He had a meeting in the morning and after lunch, not only was there no one there, he didn't even get a phone call. It's already 12:30. Do you want to take a lunch break? The secretary walked into the office and asked. Has Lu Feng not contacted you since yesterday? Huang Youwei asked. The secretary shook his head and said, he left without saying a word after dinner that day. He looked really angry. Angry? He is a businessman, and businessmen's emotions have a purpose, not to mention Lu Feng. I know him very well, Huang Youwei said he understood, but he was also murmuring in his heart. Logically speaking, Lu Feng should find someone below him to intercede, or he might go directly to his home to intercede with his wife, but now there is no movement at all. I'll take a nap. Send someone to contact him in the afternoon to find out. Don't say I asked him to go there, Huang Youwei ordered. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Lu Feng went for a stroll on the street and bought some clothes for himself. No one answered the phone at the hotel and there was no signal on his mobile phone. When he returned to the hotel in the evening, he saw a man in his 30s waiting there. When he saw him coming back, he hurriedly greeted him. "Mr. Lu, where have you been?" "I'm going to buy some clothes for the Chinese New Year." "Who are you?" Lu Feng looked at him. "I'm from the Post and Telecommunications Group." "Why don't you continue to negotiate with the province?" "This is a big project," the man said eagerly. "Businesses are negotiated. If you ask for a high price, pay back on the spot. Let's not talk anymore. We're tired." "It's boring," Lu Feng waved his hands repeatedly. "I'm here to do business, not to be angry. I love anyone. Brother, let me tell you this. Over the years, I have suffered a lot. Who am I doing it for? For the harvest in autumn? Or for the wild geese returning in spring?" "What are you talking about?" The man frowned slightly. "I'm not going to do it anyway. Even if I eat and drink every day, I still have enough money in this life. Next, I should consider financial management and create a family trust. I will be able to sleep peacefully in this life." After Lu Feng finished talking, he went upstairs humming a song. "Let's talk again and try harder," the man chased after him unwillingly. "Don't talk about it. Besides, I'm a grandson. If it weren't for the financial management party 2 days later, I would have left long ago." While waiting for the elevator, Lu Feng turned back to the man and said, "I didn't know until I went out to spend money today that money has to be spent like this. It's so cool. Goodbye." After that, he got on the elevator. In the evening, in front of Huang Yuewei's desk, the secretary led the man to tell the man the exact conversation. Huang Yuewei frowned as he listened. How could he do this?" Huang Yuewei said in disbelief. "He is a good young man who is striving to make progress. It feels like this good young man has suddenly found a downward slide of happiness," the secretary said from the side. Huang Yuewei glanced at him angrily, feeling that something was not right. This might be a strategy. If Lu Feng really wanted to eat, drink and have fun, GFN Group would be completely finished, and the spark in the domestic private semiconductor market would be gone. What a pity. "Is there a financial forum in the city these 2 days?" Huang Yuewei asked. "I heard that it was organized by several securities companies. It mainly invests in overseas stocks. Many wealthy people participated, including Shi Yizhu," the secretary replied. Huang Yuewei still didn't believe it. How could he be defeated so easily? "Call his company and ask, call the senior executives, and tell them what I asked." Huang Yuewei felt that he still had some respect among GFN's senior executives, and he had dealt with them a lot in the past. After the phone call, Zhu Lidong talked about it. The secretary already felt that the matter was finalized. Zhu Lidong said on the phone that he planned to sell it all to the Schroders Group this year, and he went into great detail. What should I do about this? The secretary was confused. This matter was decided by the province, and it would be difficult to explain if it was not done. Huang Yuewei didn't panic at all. He thought for a moment and muttered, "Form a group to cheat." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1141. Latest website. Huang Yuewei knew Lu Feng very well, and his methods seemed transparent to him. Even though multiple sources revealed that Lu Feng had quit, Huang Yuewei still didn't believe it. Let him wait for a few more days. Based on my understanding of GFN Group, their mobile phones have to be launched after the Chinese New Year. The time is very tight. He must find a way out and find a major market first. Next year will be slower. We will slowly open up markets in other provinces, Huang Yuewei said firmly. Lu Feng seemed to have found his happiness. Anyway, his big plane was parked there. Not to mention buying some things, he could even buy half of the shopping mall and take it away. In addition to enjoying every day, I just do various shopping, and I also bought myself a Ferrari sports car. Although the first Ferrari in the country was bought by Li Xiahua, Lu Feng's car is also among the top 5 in the country. 2 days passed by in a flash, and no one contacted him at all. It seemed that Lu Feng had done everything on his own, and Huang Youwei had completely ignored him. Now it was up to him to see who could beat whom. The story of Huang Youwei's open-mouthed trick on Lu Feng was widely spread in the city and province. People who originally thought that Lu Feng was having an affair with Huang Youwei were confused now. A few days ago, many local businessmen handed over their business cards. Dinner invitation, wanting to get closer. As soon as he heard that Huang Youwei had killed his own son, Lu Feng seemed to be alone in his family for the past 2 days, with no one paying attention to him at all. 2 days passed by in a flash, and the financial gathering officially started. Not many people came this time, only 30 or 40 people in total. There are still too few people in China who have enough money to invest in overseas markets. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, Lu Feng took a car to the venue. When he arrived, he found that most of them were well-known people, including Mr. Mao, who is known as the richest man in mainland China, Shi Yizhu of Giant Group, and many others. Mr. Lu from Lenovo was greeting everyone. When he saw Lu Feng coming, he walked over and said politely, "I didn't expect Mr. Lu to be here too. I happened to be here recently. I heard there was such a party, so I came to attend." Lu Feng asked him, "Don't you see that Mr. Lu also wants to invest in overseas markets? I'm just joining in the fun, mainly to get acquainted with you, Lao Shi. This is Mr. Lu, who is very popular in the local area these days." Mr. Lu introduced him helpfully. "I only read your news in newspapers in the past few years. When we meet today, you look so young." Mr. Shi shook Lu Feng's hand and said, "We are all old." "If you say that, I'm even older," Mr. Mao teased. "I met Mr. Lu a few years ago. At that time, Jiafeng Group had not developed to what it is today. Many of them were old acquaintances, and when chatting, they did not forget to inquire about the quarrel between Lu Feng and Huang Youwei." Lu Feng could only laugh and deny that there was any relationship between the two. As the scene officially began and everyone took their seats, a vice president of international finance took the stage to introduce the prospects of overseas investment, focusing on US stocks and supplemented by overseas commodity futures. He talked about the development prospects of global finance and the investment logic of various countries in the next 10 years. These people at the scene actually have little interest in investing overseas. They know very well how they made their fortune. They are like pigs in a pigsty who gained weight by being favored and eating 2 more bites of food. Letting them out now is equivalent to fight the boar outside. In this era, there are many people who are getting rich, but not many people are taking the long term. The most important thing for these people to be able to take the long term is to have self-awareness, which is very important." The talk on the stage was heated, and he kept implying that as long as you invest in overseas stocks, the minimum annual return is at least 50%, there are professional traders in charge, and the funds are large enough, you can select a few good stocks to make money like water, and there is no mention of going overseas with your funds. Handling fees and asset management fees. Everyone in the audience was whispering to each other and building relationships with each other. Lu Feng sat next to Shi Yizhu. The two of them were not familiar with each other, so they had nothing to say. "Mr. Lu has spare money to invest," Mr. Shi said first. "I have some spare money," Lu Feng replied casually. Jiafeng Group pays dividends every year, and GMA Foods also pays dividends. The money is paid directly to Lu Feng's personal account. Regardless of Jiafeng's annual dividends of hundreds of millions, most of the money goes to the top management who hold the majority of shares. In addition, Lu Feng still has his salary, and after Schroeder's group took a stake, Zhu Lidong, Wei Yandan and other senior executives will not save as much money on things as before. Lu Feng also turned a blind eye to many things. People like Zhu Lidong were all human beings, so they naturally left some for Lu Feng. All kinds of miscellaneous money are collected in one account. Lu Feng's food, drink, and other expenses over the years are all accounted for by the company. A rough estimate shows that Lu Feng's personal assets are less than 200 million. Lu Feng was still busy with the company's affairs. If he really bothered to turn the company's money into personal money, let alone 200 million, 2 billion would be small. Although it is now said that the richest man in mainland China is Mr. Mao, many people in the circle are also talking privately that the richest person should be Lu Feng. But when Jia Feng makes up a fictitious investment project overseas, the money he spends is US dollars. To be honest, I really envy you, you are so young and you are so rich. From my point of view, this overseas investment is not very reliable. Going to other people's territory is not as good as your own family after all. We are our biological sons here. I went over there and I have a biological son. Mr. Shi glanced at Lu Feng and said, it's better to invest in the mainland. This is the truth. Stocks are too weak. If you buy them, they will fall. If you try to make up for it, Nuo will probably have a headache when she sees it, let alone a mere mortal like us. Lu Feng sighed and said, stocks are like love. It's when you see someone else's red book and it's your turn to be green. Mr. Shi laughed and said, it seems that Mr. Lu has been speculating in stocks a lot. If you really want to invest, I have a good project on hand right now. I am short of a capable partner. I don't know what Mr. Lu thinks about setting up a bank. How about it? Bank? Lu Feng was slightly surprised. What instantly appeared in his mind was Minsheng Bank. This was the first private bank in mainland China. It also has a loose license. More than 20 years later, Mr. Ma would have lost his head. Can't get a banking license. That's right. I'm very interested in this. As long as we do it, banks can make sure profits without losing money. Then some corporate loans, bridges, and mortgages can be done in our own banks. Firstly, I can feel at ease, and secondly, I can also increase the strength of our own bank. Lu Feng said happily. If Mr. Lu is interested, we can talk after lunch. At 11:30, as the crowd gathered in small groups chatting and heading to the restaurant, Mr. Shi and Lu Feng were walking together. When they were about to reach the door, they called a middle-aged man over and introduced, it's Mr. Lu, the chairman of New Hope Group. Mr. Lu is very interested in investment banking matters. Mr. Lu looked at Lu Feng, shook hands, and said, I've heard of you. Our Changhong had a lively fight with you in the past few years. It's just friendly competition, Lu Feng said politely. This Mr. Lu is a well-known figure in the Sichuan and Chongqing regions. Nowadays, enterprises are divided among provinces. A company that may be well known in the local area has never been heard of in another province. We were polite to each other for a while, went to the restaurant to eat, and talked about the bank. The state-owned enterprises took the lead in this matter. They can invest, but at most they can be directors on the board of directors. As for how the license came from, you can tell these things. Don't ask, there are people with good hands and eyes who can handle it. I'd like to see the business plan. Is there any? Lu Feng asked. Mr. Lu frowned slightly and said, we people are out to play with real money, why do we need a plan? That's true, but what about the equity? Lu Feng asked. Lu Feng understood almost everything during a meal. Now he just has a general plan. They can't make too big a decision, but they can't have too many board members, so the threshold is relatively high. The minimum investment is 100 million, and the overall startup capital is 200 million. After the bank was established, it mainly focused on lending to small and medium-sized enterprises. It could also absorb and store funds, sell fund products, financial products, and other tasks. Compared with state-owned banks, the only difference is that reserve requirements are higher. The gap is not big now, and there is still 15% of the equity that no one has subscribed for, which requires about 200 million in funds. As for the total share capital of 2 billion, why does 15% require 200 million? Others have not followed, Lu Feng explained. This is a good project, I'll vote for it, Lu Feng agreed without hesitation. As for the mismatch between funds and equity, Lu Feng didn't ask a word. Sometimes suffering a loss is a blessing. Even if Lu Feng doesn't want to suffer this loss, others will be able to find someone who is willing to suffer a loss later. Not many people attended the afternoon course, so we found a secluded place to talk about this matter. In the evening of that day, Lu Feng signed the investment letter of intent and had a dinner together in the evening. In the municipal administration, Huan Yuewei had almost finished handling the matters at hand. It was rare for him to sit in the office and take a rest, but he looked at the clock on the wall with dull eyes. It's almost done, it's been a few days, aren't you in a hurry? Huan Yuewei stared at the calendar card under the clock and muttered, the Chinese New Year will be here soon, and we have to sign a contract later, so we have to hold a ceremony and invite reporters to take pictures. Take a photo, if you delay it any longer, you won't be able to go back on New Year's Eve. Huan Yuewei opened the drawer with a slight upset, took out a cigarette and lit a cigarette. He really didn't know what Lu Feng was thinking now. It would be a pity if Jiafeng Group really died. To be honest, it would be a pity. Halfway through his cigarette, Huan Yuewei picked up the phone on the table and called the secretary's office. After a while, the secretary came in and said, I called the organizer and asked, and they said he didn't attend in the afternoon. He was talking to a few bosses. Went out, seemed to be talking about something. Huan Yuewei laughed when he heard this, leaned back on his chair and said, I just said that this kid is very naughty. He went to some financial gathering and ran away in the afternoon. Don't worry, you will have to call me tomorrow at most. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1142. Latest website. Bank matters have become Lu Feng's main concern now. This is also his first personal investment in the past few years. He knows better than anyone what it means to be a shareholder of a bank. I have been busy working on this matter for several days. I signed the equity subscription letter, had many phone conversations with other investors, and discussed the location selection of the headquarters, business development, etc. During this period, Lu Feng checked the money in his account. Fortunately, it was enough for 200 million. Apart from the investment money, there was only a little interest left in the account. Fortunately, the interest was more than 20 million. Huan Yuewei waited for several days, waiting and waiting for Lu Feng to come, which made him feel a little unsure. Coupled with the news from Lu Feng Investment Bank, he couldn't sit still at all. Are you sure you invested in a bank? Huan Yuewei asked in disbelief. It's basically reliable. Many CEOs have participated. I heard that state-owned enterprises are taking the lead in preparing to build a private bank. This is also an attempt by the country, the secretary replied. Huan Yuewei's face looks ugly. This is not a good sign. A person engaged in high-end manufacturing has begun to move into finance. This definitely represents a signal. Huan Yuewei felt that he should talk to Lu Feng. Even if he made up his mind to have less or even no contact with this person in the future, he never wanted to see such a young entrepreneur go into finance. This would give the entire business world a bad reputation. Very bad head. In private enterprises, even leading figures like Lu Feng have begun to engage in finance, so who would go into manufacturing? When you call him, tell him that I will have dinner with him tonight, Huan Yuewei ordered, and then followed up with, don't spread this matter outside, don't let anyone know. The secretary agreed and walked out. The secretary knew exactly what Huan Yuewei wanted at this moment. He wants to break up. To outsiders, it seems that the two of them have never been ambiguous or electric. What Huan Yuewei wants is his own purity and purity. In the hotel, Lu Feng had just had lunch and was thinking about the stock price of Minsheng Bank after its listing in 2000. The highest price should be close to 400 billion. Not counting the dividends, Lu Feng would be able to make money after investing these 200 million for many years. It is too difficult for him to reap returns of 50 to 60 billion and just want to be a simple poor man. This was his first personal investment. Lu Feng was also wondering whether he should sell his shares in GMA Foods after returning this year and cash them out before investing in some high-growth companies in the future. Just as he was thinking about it, the phone on the table rang. "Who is it?" Lu Feng answered the phone and asked. "It's me, Secretary Li. Let's have dinner together tonight at your hotel." "He wants to sit down and have a chat with you," Secretary Li said very directly on the phone. Lu Feng just came back from his investment after hearing this. He had been busy signing various contracts these days. He originally wanted to act, but he didn't expect that he was so involved in acting that he forgot about Huang Yowei. After reacting, Lu Feng said, "Why is he looking for me? I'm busy with investment these days, otherwise I would have left early." "Mr. Lu, when it comes to business, we have to negotiate back and forth. How can we get it done right away?" "You think so? This matter is a major matter for GFN, and also for the province." "A major consideration," Secretary Li advised. They had already provided a step, so Lu Feng took advantage of the step to come down and promised on the phone to have dinner together in the evening. In the evening, Lu Feng booked a private room in the hotel. After ordering the food, he sat in the private room and waited, smoking one cigarette after another. After waiting for more than an hour, the private room was already filled with smoke, and the door of the room suddenly opened. After being pushed away, Huang Yowei stood at the door and looked inside. The two people looked at each other. They were in a private room many years ago, but Huang Yowei was sitting there and Lu Feng was standing at the door watching. Huang Yowei walked in without saying a word, closed the door smoothly, sat down and looked at Lu Feng, and said, "The material of the clothes is good. Not bad, this outfit costs tens of thousands of yuan." Lu Feng took a look at his clothes. "I heard that you invested in a bank, and are you planning to engage in finance?" Huang Yowei took out his cigarette and lit one. "If you want to make money, finance is the fastest way to make money." "Earn money and then invest in manufacturing?" Huang Yowei asked. Lu Feng shook his head repeatedly, took a deep puff of smoke and said, "We won't engage in manufacturing anymore." "You are blocking it?" "We can't do it." "What can we do in this environment?" "I'm not short of money. The money I have now is enough for me to live happily for a lifetime. I'm so tired and exhausted, but I still can't thank you for it. Am I a bitch?" Huang Yowei looked at Lu Feng opposite and was silent for a long time and said, "Are you resentful? Do you need others to support you in doing this? From the domestic manufacturing industry, you are the first-class private economy, and you should shoulder the responsibility. You have some kind of responsibility, and you can't handle such a small thing. Can't bear it? How can I resist? Where can I find someone like you? I'm here to ask for cooperation. I don't want you to favor me, right? You can't bully people like this, right? You clearly know that GFN needs a mobile phone market now. Just pinch your neck and prevent you from coming in, so what can I do?" "I'm humming cold," Lu Feng said with an ugly face. "You are talking to me in such a high-profile way now. Is it interesting? Will the GFN group be yours in a few years? I've told you, you won't suffer if you use money from foreign devils to build the country. I'm going to be high profile? Then have you thought about me? How much pain have I endured during this time? Public opinion pressure, do you know what the outside world is saying? People outside are humming, saying that I will build mountains and bridges for you." Huang Yowei slammed the table and shouted, "Without me, would you be here today? I still want to ask you this. Without me, would you be where you are today?" Lu Feng asked him. The two of them suddenly stopped talking and just smoked silently. The private room was extremely quiet, as if the quarrel just happened in another time and space. Huang Yowei put the cigarette in the ashtray, lit another one, and said slowly, "Are you sure you want to change from an entrepreneur to a capitalist?" "I want to do something, but I need someone to support me. I can't say help. You talk about the market, I talk about the market, and you talk about face. Aren't you trying to be a gangster? You are noble, you are clean, and when you need to work on the economy, I am your brother. If you want to be clean, I will be the target of suppression." Lu Feng stared at him and said, "You still talk to me about manufacturing and rejuvenating the country, do you have any shame?" Huang Yowei laughed when he heard this. He knew that the two people wanted different things from now on. "We are not talking about personal relationships now, and there is no personal relationship. I still hope that you can do what you wanted to do in the first place. This is what I am happy to see. I support the technology, industry, and trade you mentioned. If there is no GFN, it is a regrettable thing. But it is by no means something that blocks the progress of the times. I am not here today for you. There is no shortage of Lu Feng in this era, but we really need a GFN now." Huang Yowei smoked a cigarette and said, "I can make concessions, but it's not a big deal. I can't make concessions on this matter. You keep saying that GFN is important, but in the end it is not as important as your personal future." Lu Feng sneered and said, "As expected, everyone is quite selfish. You will pay 70% of the construction cost of the signal tower, and the equity will remain unchanged." Huang Yowei ignored Lu Feng's words and said, "The 10-year contract has doubled from the original basis to 1.5 times. The total amount of your investment has come down." Lu Feng was dissatisfied with this result, shook his head and said, "I don't accept it. I don't consider interests now, only emotions. Anyway, I'm not short of money. As for whether GFN lives or dies, I don't care." Huang Yowei stared at Lu Feng without speaking for a long time before asking, "Are you angry with me?" "Don't worry, you used to be the boss of a state-owned enterprise, and I was the boss of a private enterprise. Since there is no friendship between us, let's put it on the table. I have seen all kinds of bosses over the years, and I have won them all. There is no reason for me to lose when facing you." Lu Feng looked at him and said, "Don't think that the promotion of this matter is necessary for me. Even if I end up being corrupted, I won't have half a cent to do with it. Even in terms of reputation, I am better than I am now," Huang Yowei said loudly. "I just care about you and don't want everyone to be so embarrassed." Lu Feng didn't speak, and the scene fell into silence. Huang Yowei twisted the cigarette butt in his hand into the ashtray and stood up without saying a word. When he opened the door and walked out, Lu Feng's eyes couldn't help but glance at him. If the other party really leaves and you find him back, the initiative is no longer in your hands. This is the time to consider determination. Huang Yowei is betting that Lu Feng is unwilling to give up GFN because of this matter, and Lu Feng is betting that Huang Yowei will kill a good company like GFN because of a little concession. Huang Yowei's steps were very fast and crisp. He closed the door directly after leaving the private room. He took 2 steps forward and looked slightly struggling. He scratched his head vigorously with both hands and looked quite uncomfortable. Lu Feng sat there and counted the time silently in his mind. It would take about a minute to go from the private room to downstairs. If the other party didn't come back within 30 seconds, he would have to chase him out. If he was 10 or 8 seconds slower, he wouldn't be able to catch up. Time passes by second, and there is nothing more painful than playing a game with someone who knows you well. It is like 2 brothers fighting to the end, and the fight is nothing more than who cares more. Lu Feng looked at the watch on his wrist and decided to get off the stairs. Just as he was about to get up, he suddenly heard footsteps outside the door. He hurriedly sat down in his seat. The door was pushed open, and Huang Yowei stood at the door and watched. Lu Feng said, "At most, I will give you 0.5%, or you may put forward other conditions. This is my final bottom line. This is the last time. I don't want to make it so embarrassing. No matter what Jiafeng's fate is in the end, I will accompany it to the end. Whether the investment ratio is 37, 3.5 or 6.5, it doesn't make any difference. I want a license, a mobile phone manufacturing license. Lu Feng stated his conditions. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1143. Latest website. Mobile phone manufacturing requires a license. This license was not cancelled until 2004. In the following years, a large number of mobile phone manufacturers appeared, and the price of such licenses was raised to a high price. Huang Yowei agreed to formally sign the contract the day after tomorrow, and then left. Lu Feng was the only one left in the private room. The waiter opened the door and walked in and asked, "Sir, can we serve the food?" "No more," Lu Feng stood up and left. "If you don't eat, you'll have to pay for the private room," the waiter said hurriedly. Lu Feng casually dropped 100 yuan and walked out of the private room. There was no winner in this business and it had nothing to do with profit. This was a deal between Jiafeng's life and death and Huang Yowei's future. Huang Yowei has higher pursuits, and Lu Feng also has his own plans. The two of them came out of that small place. At first they just needed each other, but now they no longer need each other, they naturally return to the vast sea of people. Lu Feng has always felt that he does not belong to this era. He is very lonely. As long as there is someone around him who can warm his heart, he wants to be his friend or lover, whether it is Zhang Xiaoyan or Huang Yowei. People always rely on each other to keep each other warm on cold winter nights. At that moment, they feel that the other person is the love of their life and a lifelong friendship. But when midsummer arrives, they realize that the other person is not that good. In the end, everyone is busy with their own affairs and there is no news. Parting in movies, TV shows or novels always has a sense of ritual. There is a precise time when we will not meet again, but life is just the opposite. When we meet, there is a sense of ritual. Later, when we think about when we stopped contacting, there is no time point. After much deliberation, I can only give myself a vague answer. Maybe it was that midsummer? Maybe. Many times, Lu Feng thought that some people were destined to meet and become friends or lovers, but later he felt that he was just a puppet of fate. There were too few things that he could control in his life. Who would he become? Whether the son is in the city or in the countryside, what kind of education he will receive, and what kind of person he will become. Later on, who will become my classmates, who will I sleep with in bunk beds, what kind of company will I enter, who will I become colleagues with, and what kind of bad, good, and noble people I will meet. He lay on the bed, looked at the ceiling, and wondered why people in this world always felt lonely. Maybe it was because he had too few real choices. We are the donkeys pulling the mill, and we think our best friend is the stone mill. 2 days later, the contract was finalized, and several TV stations and newspapers were invited. The two parties held a press conference. Faced with various interviews from reporters at the meeting, Lu Feng, dressed in a suit and leather boots, talked about this cooperation to the camera. Let's talk about the future of domestic mobile phones. Huang Yowei acted as the representative, and both parties signed the contract and exchanged contracts with each other. After the signing was completed, Huang Yowei looked at Lu Feng and asked in a low voice, "The Chinese New Year is almost here, when are you going to go back?" "Tomorrow." Huang Yowei nodded and said, "See you soon." Lu Feng just smiled and said nothing. There was a dinner party after the signing ceremony, but Lu Feng found an excuse and did not attend. Downstairs at the scene, Huang Yowei and Mr. Wei watched Lu Feng leave in the car, staring at the car for a long time until they could no longer see it. Huang Yowei looked back with a trace of disappointment in his expression. He took a deep breath and cheered up again. As the year was approaching, more and more meetings were waiting for him to attend. As long as there were no problems next year, he would be transferred to a higher position. It's basically a foregone conclusion. He has his own way to go, and he will go further and further. In the afternoon, there will be a guidance meeting on the city's economy next year. The heads of important enterprises in the city will be present. When these bosses face Huang Yowei, their faces are full of smiles. Every word of these people must be carefully considered. For these enterprises, Huang Yowei's words, just one word can make them ascend to heaven, and one word can make their company slowly disappear into obscurity. In this world, no one is a supporting role for someone else. Everyone is the protagonist of their own destiny, but the two straight lines become farther and farther apart after they intersect. The matter was done. After Lu Feng returned to the hotel, he called Zhu Lidong and Du Guoying respectively and briefly explained the matter here, asking them to expand the mobile phone market here. The first batch of Jiexun mobile phone products had already been launched. Off the assembly line, the production line is in the Suzhou factory, so transportation costs are much less. Guangzhou province is still grinding. According to Zhu Lidong, it should be no problem to sign the contract in February next year. They have reached consensus on many aspects. After Jiangsu's cooperation model is finalized, it will also have a promotion effect on other provinces. After everything was arranged, it was already the 12th lunar month, and seeing the new year approaching, Lu Feng called Zhang Xiaoyan first and asked her if she was sure she wouldn't go back. Zhang Xiaoyan said that she had given the factory a holiday and that she was going to participate in an activity class during the new year. She said it was some kind of mathematical Olympiad class. I am going to participate in a training camp abroad, and I will go to Chinatown in the United States to experience the Overseas Spring Festival. Lu Feng listened to Zhang Xiaoyan on the phone talking about how good this mathematical Olympiad class was, how much it cost, and how quickly the child's academic performance improved. The most important thing is that this score is popular in overseas universities. Now he is paving the way for Duo, who will graduate from high school. If you send them overseas, you can go directly to prestigious schools. Zhang Xiaoyan expressed her expectations on the phone, but what Lu Feng heard was Duo getting angry over there. You should let your child rest as long as it's the Chinese New Year, Lu Feng said helplessly. What a great opportunity, now is the time for her to learn. I want to find my father, I want to return to the village. Duo's voice was filled with grievances. Shut up, why are you going back to the village? Are you going to farm? Zhang Xiaoyan scolded Duo, hold those two peas back to me. Whose child is like you? After hearing these words, Lu Feng could only give up persuading. Zhang Xiaoyan's education for her children was no different from those in the village. He was only willing to give her what he thought was the best. These resources were something Zhang Xiaoyan never dared to think about when she was a child. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng called his mother and said he would go back tomorrow. After everything was arranged, Lu Feng boarded a private plane and headed straight to his hometown the next day. The north in the 12th lunar month was a stage of ice and snow. Lu Feng didn't understand why many years later many people would discuss whether it was colder in the north or the south. When he stepped out of the cabin and faced the weather of more than 20 degrees below zero, he felt his skin tightening in an instant, and he hurriedly asked someone to take out a thick coat and put it on him. The sky is gray, the sun above our heads is emitting a dim light, and there is a pungent smell floating in the air. This kind of pollution caused by burning coal in every household may be what countless people call the smell of childhood. After leaving the airport, I got in the car and headed straight towards the county seat. Along the way, the driver talked about the development of the city in the past 2 years, saying that money is not valuable anymore. Although I earn a little more than before, I still don't have much money. Flour. Lu Feng listened to the chanting and looked out the car window. The air conditioner was on inside the car. The wind was freezing outside and there were frost flowers on the car windows. If he wanted to see clearly, he needed to wipe the frost flowers clean with his hands. Then the cold feeling makes people shiver. There are 2 straight rows of big white poplars on the roadside, bare, and the trunks are exuding grayish-white. The leaves have been covered by the heavy snow that has not had time to dissipate. This world is monotonous and desolate. Occasionally I pass by a few houses. The outer curtains hang down on the doors and windows, and the windows are covered with white plastic. There are coal piles in the corners of the window sills. The men who come out to shovel coal are wearing bulky cotton trousers. They see vehicles speeding by. He turned around and took a look. Lu Feng looked at the very familiar scene in front of him and felt a little disturbed in his heart, but he didn't know what to say. Every time he returned to the north, he always sighed for this place and thought of his childhood, but he didn't want to stay. Really do something about it? Raising the window, he leaned on his seat and suddenly heard a sentence in his heart, "My hometown that I love and hate." As the car drove into the county town, the surroundings began to become prosperous. Passing through the most prosperous cross street in the county, the car stopped in front of a 2-story small foreign-style building. Red lanterns were hung at the gate and the ground was cleaned. It was clean, and everyone in the family was standing at the gate waiting. Lu Feng's mother couldn't stop smiling when she saw the car. This was the first time Lu Feng had come back in 2 years. The car door was opened. Her mother looked at Lu Feng and said with concern, "Are you freezing? Come home quickly. Get on the Kong and cover yourself." Compared to last time, there was no one at home this time, only about a dozen immediate family members. When they entered the house, the Kong on the first floor was already filled with various fruits and dried fruits, and the family members were chatting with each other. Lu Feng didn't have much impression of his relatives, so he could only smile slightly, sit on the Kong and chat, talking about what he had done outside in the past 2 years. Unknowingly, snowflakes were falling outside the window. My father lit the stove early, and several relatives helped with the work, busy preparing fried cakes for the evening. "Xiao Feng, are you still in contact with Xiao Yan?" an uncle asked tentatively. "We still keep in touch occasionally." Lu Feng didn't know how to answer, so he smiled awkwardly. "I have something to do. Just go over there and let's find a better one." The uncle looked at Lu Feng and asked, "Did your mother tell you?" "What are you talking about?" Lu Feng said a little confused. "Mom walked in and said, 'Didn't I tell you that there is a surprise, but today is not the right time to say it? Before the Chinese New Year, you go visit your grandparents and wait for them to come back in a few days.'" "He's back." "Who?" Lu Feng felt that something was not right about this. The uncle smiled at the side and said, "How old he is, and he still hides it. If this happens, it will definitely be a good thing. Besides, Zhuangzi is in the provincial capital, and he is not far away from the world. He will come back soon." Zhuangzi, Lu Feng felt something was wrong, and he had already guessed what was going on. He said, "I'm very busy. I might leave when the company has something to do." "This won't be a delay," Mom said to Lu Feng, "you are not a problem alone. Someone introduced me. You just want to meet me. Let me tell you, this girl is very beautiful. Everyone will say it when she sees her. She looks like a big star." Lu Feng felt helpless when he heard this. He really wanted to say that just because he didn't get married, it didn't mean he didn't have a woman. What's more, why didn't he just find a big star, someone who looked like a big star? Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1144. Latest website. Several relatives almost praised this girl to the sky. Not only is she good looking, but her family is also in good condition. She is an only child. Her parents are both long-term workers. The girl's mother is also a teacher. The most important thing is that the girl is young. She is only 20 years old this year, almost 10 years younger than Lu Feng. People in small places have narrow vision. They can only imagine a rich man's significant other, that is, a beautiful little wife. I heard from Uncle Lu Feng that they had no intention of getting married. It was because they heard that the son of the old Lu family was promising, and many people persuaded him to get her married. Although Lu Feng runs a company, in the eyes of local people, it is still not as secure as a state-owned enterprise. The most important thing is that Lu Feng is not only married for the second time, but also really old. The woman's family is also afraid that outsiders will say that he has given money to others for money. My daughter found an old man. Two old men. Lu Feng sat on the Kong and looked down at himself, as if he had indeed eaten a little in the past 2 years. Don't blame my aunt for being blunt. You are about to be 30 years old. The children of people in the same generation as you have gone out to work. Do you remember Wang Lao? When he was a child, he always had a big nose, and he married when he was 16. You are a daughter-in-law, and the child was born the next year. He is 1 year older than you, and the child is 14 years old this year, my aunt said, sitting aside. Lu Feng sat there dumbfounded, knowing that more than 20 years later at his age, there would still be many people shamelessly saying that he was a boy. If you say so, he's an old man. Lu Feng nodded helplessly. You were delayed by Xiao Yan. Otherwise, if the children are older now, go back to the village and see who is around the same age as you and who is not the father of 2 children. If the most talked about thing outside is business, then the most difficult thing to face when returning home is the concern of relatives at home. Sometimes Lu Feng also wonders whether he can't face those embarrassing answers, or he is embarrassed when facing his family. Different from more than 20 years later, if you don't get married now, not to mention the village, all the villages around you will be your legend, allowing you to realize what it means to be truly formidable. The meal in the evening was very rich. There are not many vegetables in the winter in the north. Various bean sprouts, stored cabbage, radishes, and potatoes are the most popular vegetables. Coupled with stewed chicken, it is definitely a feast that ordinary people cannot eat on weekdays. The sky had just darkened at night, and the county was basically completely dark. Not to mention street lights, there were only a few traffic lights. The bright moon outside the window was so bright, and after the news broadcast on the TV, it was a prime-time TV series. Lu Feng had not slept on the Kong for several years, and tonight he decided to sleep on the Kong. His mother and some relatives went upstairs to rest, and after a while Lu Feng came and took out a quilt. After laying out the bedding, my mother told him to go to bed early and helped him carry the urine bucket in. It was past 8:30, and only a few channels were still showing TV series. Other brands were already in vain. Lu Feng often went to bed at 11 or 12 in the south, but now he didn't know what to do. He had laid out the bedding himself, without a mobile phone or the internet. He sat on the Kong and stared blankly at the bedding. These beddings were all made of cotton bought at home and were very thick, especially the quilt. When pressed against his body, he felt like it's a person lying down, solid and reassuring. Lu Feng, who always had an irregular schedule and liked evenings, got into bed before 9 o'clock, turned off the TV, reached for the edge of the Kong, found a light cord and pulled it, and the whole world went dark. There is no need to worry about being disturbed by the bustling city, and there is no need to bother with blackout curtains. There is nothing else in this world except the distant barking of dogs. This Kong was too hard, and a fire had been burning under it for another day. People were like barbecues on the rock slab. In the morning, when the sky was dim, Lu Feng climbed out of the bed and searched for water all over the world. He jumped off the Kong and scooped it with a red ladle. I took half a cup of water and drank it in one breath. After drinking it, I felt a little cold. A layer of ice had already formed in the bucket, and the heat from last night had been exhausted in the night. At this moment, the room was like an ice cellar. Lu Feng peed and quickly got into bed. Xiao Feng, are you awake? I'll light the stove for you, Dad's voice came from outside the house. In these years, this should be the first time for Lu Feng to celebrate the new year at home. Since he became this Lu Feng, he has never felt the warmth of this home. Dad dragged a dead branch, walked in, cleaned out the ashes from the stove, and quickly folded the branch into small sections. In a moment, the flames burst into flames in the stove. I'm going to see your grandma today, and I'll buy some things later. You haven't been there in the past few years. I always give you some money during holidays, Dad ordered. Okay. As the room warmed up, Lu Feng put on his clothes and took the urine bucket out. The world outside had become white overnight. The snow was shin-deep under his feet, but a path had been cleared, leading directly to the courtyard gate. Lu Feng didn't have a car, so he had to call Gao Jiwei in the morning and asked him to borrow the car from his factory for a while. Gao Jiwei was very happy to hear that Lu Feng was back and told him that he would let Lu Feng stay for a few more days. He came back immediately after the new year. At around 9 o'clock in the morning, a Hutu Mercedes-Benz stopped in front of his house. Lu Feng drove the car and bought some gifts. He wanted to buy something good, but what good things could be found in the county town? Fortunately, when I came back, I brought some specialties and so on, divided them into several portions, pulled them up in a car and drove towards the village. On the way, Lu Feng suggested that the elderly in the family should also move into the city and buy a house with his own money. And even mentioned asking my parents to move to the south. Money is a good thing, you can buy a lot of it, but my parents have lived here for half their lives, and their interpersonal relationships are all here. They moved out rashly, not to mention losing their relatives and friends, and the environment is not suitable for them. I am afraid that they can't even understand what they are saying. The two elderly people also have limited legs and feet. There will be a lot of troubles in the city, and they are not as comfortable as in the village. When we arrived at the place, we naturally greeted him for dinner. The old man was very happy to see Lu Feng and asked questions. They didn't know anything about business. They just cared about whether you were married and had children. I visited two families in one day, and they all tried to persuade Lu Feng that it was time to find someone to settle down with. He was almost 30 years old and it was time to settle down. Hearing that there was a very good girl, the two old men persuaded Lu Feng to seize her. It is not easy to find a wife now. Lu Feng didn't say much. In addition to giving some New Year gifts to the family, he also gave tens of thousands of yuan and asked them if they would like to live in the city. The elders of both families said that they were used to living in the village and it was not easy to go to the city. Adapt. Before leaving, Lu Feng felt that he should build a new house for the two elderly people. As for how many relatives were involved, Lu Feng didn't want to think about it that much. At most, it would cost several times more. In the past few years, all the relatives in the family have become rich to some extent, and the elderly in the family will naturally not be poor, but Lu Feng still feels that he has not taken good care of it. Compared with his own big villa, it is indeed shabby. When I got home that day, before I even got off the car, I found a middle-aged woman standing in front of my house. She looked to be in her 40s and was wearing a floral cotton padded jacket. Lu Feng's mother got out of the car and said hurriedly, "It's so cold, Erba, what the hell are you doing standing here? Isn't this good news for you? That girl originally said she wouldn't come back until the Chinese New Year, but she called back yesterday and said she would come back tomorrow," the woman said excitedly. "Thank you for your hard work. I'm waiting here in the cold weather. Come in quickly," Mom politely invited me in. After entering the house, Lu Feng looked at the matchmaker, and the matchmaker also looked at him. He praised the child for not looking old. He couldn't tell that he was almost 30 years old. He was good-looking and energetic. The woman would definitely be able to do that. Hit it at a glance. Lu Feng didn't know whether she was really complimenting her or just saying it politely. Being accustomed to big scenes, he didn't know what to say and could only stand there in shock. Before leaving, Lu Feng's mother brought a lot of dried fruits and candies, and both sides exchanged polite greetings. At the dinner table in the evening, my father, who was always a man of few words, said this time that if Lu Feng fell in love with him, he would start a family and have a child soon. What would it be like to have no children? Lu Feng didn't quite understand what they were thinking, but after only a few days in the past 2 years, he could only nod along with their ideas. As for the mention of children at home, Lu Feng suddenly reminded of Zhang Fengxia, who was far away across the ocean. After dinner, Lu Feng calculated the time difference and used his home landline to call, but it turned out that the international line was not yet open at home, so he couldn't get through at all. He had no choice but to drive to the phone booth in the county center. As soon as he got out of the car, Lu Feng stamped his feet vigorously to shake the snow and mud under his feet. Suddenly he heard a female voice not far away shouting, "Stop pestering me, no? It's impossible for us." "How is it impossible? Why are you like this?" "How can I be sorry for you?" the boy asked. "The sky has darkened. As the wind gets stronger, there are fewer people on the street. There is so much excitement in this place with little entertainment. It is like a fire on a winter night. The fire of gossip instantly burns up. I squint my eyes into the dim place. Look. You are very nice, but my mother told me that I could never marry someone like you." The girl broke free from the boy's hand and scolded him to let go. "Just say, wow, what do you want? You just said you wanted that star today, and I will pick it for you." The boy was in a state of bitter love drama, but the dialect made the scene slightly funny. "Does your family have a car?" the girl asked. "Didn't your family say they wanted a motorcycle at first? I bought all the Southern 125, but now you tell me that you want a car." The boy looked very angry and shouted, "What kind of family can afford one now? Car? Not to mention cars, how many people from all over the country can afford a 125 motorcycle? I don't care, if you can't afford it, someone else can." The weather was really too cold. Lu Feng wanted to watch the whole show, but the weather was not kind. The wind felt like a knife cutting his face. The most important thing was that this kind of ordinary drama was really boring. Lu Feng stuffed his hands into each other's sleeves and walked towards the phone booth. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1145. Latest website. After calling, Lu Feng didn't pick up the phone for a long time. Lu Feng called again. The other end of the phone just picked up. The other end of the phone seemed to be quite busy. Zhang Fengxia picked up the phone and asked in English who was there. "It's me, Lu Feng." Lu Feng could tell that she was in a good mood, and he felt relieved. In New York, the lights were brightly lit in a villa, and the room was as warm as spring. There was a Christmas tree used for Christmas in the corner. Zhang Xiaoyan and Duo Duo were sitting on the sofa. Zhang Fengxia turned around and glanced at the two of them, and said to the phone, "Why did you remember to call me? I'm getting ready to celebrate the New Year. I'm just worried that you won't have a good time there. I'm going back to my hometown for the Chinese New Year this year. How about you being there alone? If your studies are heavy, don't go to school." Lu Feng asked with concern, "Is it easy to move around now? My belly isn't that big. It's only 6 months old. I'm fine here." "That." Zhang Fengxia turned around and glanced at Zhang Xiaoyan. Zhang Xiaoyan waved her hands repeatedly. Zhang Fengxia said to the phone, I know you a few classmates happened to be celebrating the new year together and were busy. Isn't it cold when you go back to your hometown? It's really cold this year. My phone at home can't make international calls yet. It's fine over there. If you don't want to stay anymore, just talk. This year, the company's board of directors got me a private jet. After the new year, I asked them to apply for international routes. What do you think? It's convenient to come back. If you don't want to stay in China, you can go again. Lu Feng asked concernedly, is there any cost? The consumption is high over there. I will give you another transfer after the new year. When you get bored, you can go shopping. It's chaotic over there. If it doesn't work, I'll ask Thai security to send a few people there. Don't bother me. I act like I'm a big shot. Everything is fine now. You don't need to send money. If I miss you, I will tell you, Zhang Fengxia said. Zhang Fengxia also shared a lot of things in the United States during the phone call. Some time ago, she went to listen to an economist's lecture on the world economy and the US dollar. There was an argument mentioned in it, that is, as the world's major currency, small and medium-sized enterprises, the country faces the vulnerability of its financial defense system in the face of a strong US dollar. In this lecture, the professor called the US dollar a pirate in the modern financial system, and also mentioned the Asian financial crisis. Every indiscriminate issuance of US dollars will lead to the prosperity of small and medium-sized countries around the world. However, as the Federal Reserve raises interest rates and shrinks its balance sheet, the US dollar, if they return, the assets of these small countries will shrink rapidly and their currencies will collapse. Then Wall Street will move out to harvest high-quality assets at low prices. Zhang Fengxia reminded Lu Feng on the phone to beware of the Asian financial crisis and to guard against currency depreciation, sharp increase in raw material prices, and chain reactions caused by the sluggish consumer market. The larger a company faced with such a situation, the easier it would be for it to collapse. I know, take care of yourself, Lu Feng said with concern. Okay, I'm not a 3-year-old child. Is it cold over there? Hang up. Don't you have a mobile phone? Zhang Fengxia suddenly thought of this. Do you think mobile phones can have signal in the county? Lu Feng wondered whether he should laugh or cry. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng walked out of the phone booth and glanced at the place where the young couple was. The sky had completely darkened. It was extremely dark and the two of them had already left. Lu Feng drove home slightly disappointed. Basically all entertainment activities in the county are closed at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. If you want to go to a karaoke bar or something, you have to go to the city. Many people feel uncomfortable returning to their own small place because every day here is the same. Walking out to the street and pulling out random people and chatting with a few people can build connections with each other. Compared with the rapid development of big cities, this place is like a backwater. Lu Feng went home and had dinner, which was similar to yesterday. He watched the news broadcast and a TV series, then lay on the Kong and fell asleep in a daze. Early the next morning, there was a burst of crackling firecrackers from a distance. Only the Chinese New Year brings changes here. This is also the reason why many people were so happy during the Chinese New Year when they were young. More than 20 years later, it is changing every day. They are all challenging the threshold of people's desires. But now, only 10 months later, I have a chance to vent. I can eat hard, wear hard, and meet the people I look forward to. The matchmaker came at around 7 o'clock in the morning and sat in the side room chatting with Lu Feng's mother. The two parties were having a great time talking, and his father called Lu Feng down. Oh, let me congratulate you. The matchmaker looked at Lu Feng and said, yesterday, I had a chat with the girl's mother. Her daughter is not a high school student. She is a serious college student. Let me tell you, college students are still like this. It's so beautiful that most people can't even think of it. Lu Feng's mother smiled so hard that her eyes almost disappeared, and she said happily, Reassure them, as long as the daughter is good, the bride price is not a problem, and college students are even better. Lu Feng stood aside and was a little confused. Now we were talking about betrothal gifts? I always feel like I have to get married as soon as this new year is over. College student? Which university? Which year? No allocation. Lu Feng felt that this matter was a bit unreliable. He could see that this matchmaker knew that her family was rich, but she didn't know how rich she was. Not to mention matchmakers, even Lu Feng's parents don't know how rich Lu Feng is. Their knowledge of Lu Feng is still limited to GMA food, and they all say that their son runs a factory. Even so, it is something that ordinary people in the area cannot even imagine. Which university? I really didn't ask. Don't think about assigning jobs. Nowadays, college students don't assign jobs. What you are talking about is the old calendar. The daughter is handsome, the family is decent, and she has education. How many people can catch up with her? She's here. The matchmaker looked at Lu Feng as if he were a country bumpkin, and persuaded her, you are so rich, but you don't expect to marry her home to make money. The mother of the child is a college student, so what difference will your child make in the future? When Lu Feng heard this, he could only say nothing. He felt like he was getting a good breeding pig. My daughter will be back today. You two will meet at noon. You won't go to the house. Make arrangements outside. Just ask Lu Feng to come with me. If you two like each other, then go home to get her. The matchmaker looked at her. Lu Feng's mother said seriously, Xiao Feng's mother, I have something to say first. The bride price is very heavy. It's not a problem. Nowadays, the bride price for marrying a daughter-in-law is usually 5,000 or 6,000 yuan. For those who are more particular, they will give you 8,800 yuan. As long as the two of you can get married, 88,000 yuan is not a problem, Lu Feng's mother said happily. As soon as this was said, the matchmaker became happy and asked about her matchmaker's money again. After making sure that everything was fine, she asked Lu Feng to clean up and follow her. Lu Feng changed his clothes and tidied up briefly. Although this matter seemed to him to be nonsense, there was really no fun at home, so he wanted to go out for some fresh air and get to know more people. I drove to the center of the county. The county is now very poor. There are only two large markets, one selling daily necessities and the other selling clothes and home appliances. If you want to find a cafe or something, forget it. Lu Feng booked a private room at the best hotel in the county. The matchmaker asked him to order first. Then after going downstairs, he brought a girl up. He opened the door and walked in. Lu Feng took a look at the girl. He was stunned. The girl is really good looking. She is about 1.65 meters tall. She has a perm and wears a pink necktie coat. She doesn't have much makeup. She has obvious northern skin and her face is slightly red. She didn't dare to walk in. He went to see Lu Feng, keeping his eyes on the floor. The reason why Lu Feng was stunned was because he had seen this pink necktie coat last night, and it was similar in height and body shape. There were so few people in the county, and there was probably no other person with such a similar look. Sit down quickly, Lu Feng, please greet someone, the matchmaker said hurriedly. You're welcome, please sit down. It's cold outside, isn't it? Lu Feng was polite, stood up, poured her a cup of tea, and asked, what do you call her? Fang, the girl whispered. Lu Feng was speechless when he heard this answer and looked at the matchmaker. The matchmaker smoothed things over and said, my surname is Wang Fang. His name is Lu Feng. He is developing in the south and has a factory here, right? There is a local factory, but I basically don't need to take care of it now. Lu Feng looked at the girl sitting opposite. She was indeed pretty in the eyes of the locals, but Lu Feng had traveled all over the country for many years, and there were so many different styles. He had never seen it before, but in his eyes it was just ordinary. As for a college student, it was even more nonsense. Lu Feng could tell from her innocent face that this person had never been outside the city. I heard from this aunt that you graduated from university. Which university? What major did you study? Lu Feng asked. That. Fang Fang hesitated with her head lowered. Young girl is shy, don't ask like that, people won't dare to look at you. Let me tell you, that school is amazing, second only to Tsinghua University and Peking University, and the students are also very professional, the matchmaker said to Lu Feng. Introduce your situation. After the matchmaker finished speaking, she said a few words to Fang Fang, asking her not to be shy, raise her head and look, and say anything if she had anything to say. Fang Fang raised her head and glanced at Lu Feng, and asked directly, do you have Santana at home? No. When Lu Feng heard this, he thought carefully about it. The Santana he bought a few years ago had been sold, and he answered honestly, no, but there are still 2 Crown Mercedes. Fang Fang looked at the matchmaker and asked, you said there are rich people, why don't you even have Santana? The matchmaker was also anxious and asked Lu Feng, you run a factory, can't you even afford a Santana? Lu Feng was speechless when he was asked, so he could only say awkwardly, I work hard, I can buy it. Then how much money does your factory make in a year? Does this money go to you, or is it controlled by your parents? Fang Fang asked again. I really don't know about things in the factory, Lu Feng answered honestly. You don't know about your factory? Fang Fang lost her shyness when she first entered the house. She looked at the matchmaker and seemed to be dissatisfied with Lu Feng. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1146. Latest website. Lu Feng didn't know how to explain it to her. He didn't plan to do it anyway, so he simply said directly, I have been working in the South these years, where consumption is high, and I opened a company there, which has been losing money. Both the matchmaker and Fang Fang were stunned when these words came out. Lu Feng was telling the truth. Jiafeng really didn't make money, but Jiafeng didn't make money, but it didn't mean that he didn't make money. The gentleness on Fang Fang's face quickly turned into coldness. She sat there and looked at the matchmaker and asked, didn't you say you opened a factory? Are you very rich? He doesn't even have a Santana and he still loses money every year. There is no way I can follow him. Are you going to repay the famine? The 2-story Western-style house I live in, that Lu Feng, the matchmaker asked Lu Feng, you also have a small Western-style building in the south, right? How much money do you lose every year? The loss is not big. There are no small foreign-style buildings in the south, Lu Feng said helplessly. When the matchmaker heard this, she became anxious. She stood up and said to Lu Feng, come out for a moment. After leaving the private room, the waiter was serving food. The two of them were standing in the corridor. The matchmaker said anxiously, it's a blind date. Why do you say everything? You just come out to do business. Be smart. Your family's life is better than that of ordinary people. There are too many, please blow more, you know. I think relationships can be more long-lasting if there is more truth and less falsehood. Lu Feng looked at the matchmaker and said, you look like an honest person at first glance. How can you have a woman like this? As the saying goes, women rely on cheating, coaxing, getting started, giving birth to children, and living their lives in this way. You deceived her. She will definitely be determined to go home and have a baby. The matchmaker gave Lu Feng advice. I didn't realize that you were doing assembly line work. Lu Feng sighed helplessly and said, I still value love. I also understand love. When you fall in love, you are in love. Now you have to find a way to fall in love with her for a while. You can't just say those disappointing things. The matchmaker asked in a low voice, you are such a young man, don't you want to fall in love with her? Lu Feng always felt that the love in her mouth was completely different from the love he said. Just listen to my aunt. She's been here before. Look at her appearance, her figure, her protuberance, and her academic qualifications. What else do you want? Go home and enjoy yourself at night, said the matchmaker. As he spoke, he walked inside, obviously not wanting to tangle with Lu Feng anymore. Lu Feng had no choice but to follow him in. He now felt that this matchmaker should not be called a matchmaker, but a madam, but she was telling the truth. Nowadays, blind dates are all about coaxing and cheating. Many people just borrow a suit and then do it. I had a pager, and there were relatives at home who were doing business, so I pretended to be the boss. After I got married and had a child, I found that I was so poor that I couldn't find a job. Entering the private room, the food inside was about the same. Fang Fang had already started to eat. She was not very satisfied with Lu Feng. She had been on blind dates a lot in the past year. She had seen many such scammers. Adhering to the principle of not getting what she wanted, eat as much as you can. I asked Lu Feng just now. His business in the south has just started. It's normal for him to make some losses, not much, but he will make it back in a few years. There are people here to help him take care of the factory, and he can just collect the money. After you get married, you don't have to do anything. If you want to live here, stay here. If you want to go to the south, go to the south. The matchmaker drew a picture on the side and said, as for buying Santana or a small Western-style house, it's not a problem for them. Son, the main thing is to look at people. What do you think of this person? Fang Fang stared at Lu Feng and looked at him. In terms of appearance and energy, he was really good. Even though he was older than her, he still had the feeling of a big city person, so naturally she liked him. Let's get in touch again. If you have time, go to his house and have a look, Fang Fang said. Isn't this a good thing? Let's eat first. The matchmaker looked at the table of food and was already greedy. Lu Feng kept chatting at the dinner table. From the few words, Lu Feng guessed that she had graduated from junior high school at most, and she still didn't pay attention to the class. From time to time, the matchmaker hinted to Lu Feng to brag more, but Lu Feng had no intention of doing so. Fang Fang suggested that the Chinese New Year was coming soon and she wanted to go to the market in the afternoon and buy some clothes. After dinner, we went to the market. The clothes here are very cheap. A cotton coat costs dozens of yuan, and the more expensive ones cost more than 100. Fang Fang bought a lot of large and small bags, all of which were paid by Lu Feng. She was beginning to be satisfied with Lu Feng. Judging from the way Lu Feng paid, he should be a rich man. The man who had a blind date last time spent money as if it were a piece of meat. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I put all my things in the car and was about to go back when a Santana parked in front of the car. A young man got out of the driver's seat. When he saw Fang Fang, he shouted, "What are you doing here? Who is he?" Lu Feng took a look at the man. It was none other than the buddy from last night. Wang Erfang was also nervous when she saw the man, and said to Lu Feng, "Let's get in the car and go." The man refused to let him go at all. He rushed up and asked who Lu Feng was and why he was buying clothes here. He said angrily, "Didn't you say I don't have a Santana? I borrowed it. I went back and sold the motorcycle. I can buy it if I borrow some more money. What are you doing now?" There were already a lot of people at the trade fair, and when they saw such a lively scene, they all immediately gathered around. Wang Erfang felt embarrassed to be stared at by so many people, and her face turned red with anger. She stared at the man without saying a word, and just kept urging him. Lu Feng quickly opened the car door. "They're just friends, you don't have to think too much." Lu Feng opened the car door and let Wang Erfang get in the car first. He took out a cigarette from his pocket and handed one to the other person, and asked, "Is she your girlfriend? Is she your woman?" During the Chinese New Year, you drag other women to buy clothes. Don't you look good on your face? You look like a dog in what you wear. Do you do this kind of thing? Wang Erfang, get off here. The man was very angry, banging on the car window with his hand, and cursing at Lu Feng. There was some commotion at the scene, and Lu Feng couldn't persuade him, so he got into the car, stepped on the accelerator and sped away, sending the matchmaker and Fang Fang home respectively. It was already evening when Lu Feng returned home. As soon as I entered the house, my mother greeted me and asked expectantly, "How is it?" "It's okay, but I feel it's a bit Philistine." "I'm just asking for some money or something." Lu Feng said a few words casually. "Mom, it's all about free love now. I can handle my relationship matters myself. I don't know how to be anxious. It's done once it's done. Besides, don't worry about finding a local one." My mother was rambling. It was nothing more than the same set of things from the older generation. We can't just look at the present scenery, think about the future. Lu Feng didn't say much. After this year, he would leave. As for Wang Erfang, her fate should stay here. As the new year is approaching, people working outside are returning home one after another. More and more cars are entering the city from the village, and there are more and more entertainment activities, such as dancing yanko, beating drums, and groups of children in the streets. In the past, Lu Feng thought that the current Chinese New Year was called Chinese New Year, but over the past few years, he felt bored again. There was a time when he thought that the flavor of the New Year was lost in the times, but only now did he understand that the flavor of the New Year was just lost in his own life. In the years, the matchmaker called twice and said that the person was the one who went on a blind date and was pestering Fang Fang endlessly. This also showed that Fang Fang was in demand, so Lu Feng must hurry up. She also told him once again that he must be able to brag. She arranged to go to the woman's house on the day before the Chinese New Year, and again on the New Year's Day. The families of both parties felt that they were similar, and they could get engaged in the spring. Lu Feng was very resistant to such an anxious engagement. He was originally trying to fool his family, but his parents didn't listen to what Lu Feng said at all. Now they are like Zhang Xiaoyan's parents, feeling like they are making the decision for you. Lu Feng was very resistant at first, but then he showed off and told them that they could do whatever they wanted with them, and he would leave after celebrating the New Year anyway. On the 28th day of the 12th lunar month, with only 2 days left before the New Year, a cargo ship docked in the Strait of Malacca. This 10,000-ton cargo ship was loaded with goods from all over the world, and its destination was Xiangjiang Wharf. The person in charge of the cargo ship was a Korean. He called all the crew members to the deck and announced a day off. It was considered an early New Year celebration. Not long after everyone dispersed, the port customs received a call. "We have received news that there are contraband on freighter number 31,825. We now require you to inspect the freighter. It will not be released until the inspection is completed. Remember, this inspection must be meticulous. There will be an investigation team formed by relevant personnel to accompany you. Check together and the investigation team members will arrive within 3 hours." 3 hours later, the weather at the port began to darken, and a group of more than 30 people controlled the cargo ship number 31,825. "What? There are contraband on our cargo ship?" The deputy was a little confused when he heard the news, and explained, "We have a full set of procedures, all customs certificates, and the goods on the cargo ship are all counted before boarding. If a comprehensive inspection is required, many items will not be delivered on time, which would be a huge loss. I'm sorry, this is an order from above. Your belongings must be inventoried," the person in charge of the customs said very forcefully. "Now, except for a few necessary personnel to accompany the inspection, everyone else will disembark." "I know what you mean, it's just a small thing. Please cooperate with our inspection. If you hurry, It can be completed in 3 days. In an office in the United States, a man in his 40s stood in front of his desk and said, "The news just reported from the Federal Maritime Department is that the ship has been intercepted at the port of the Strait of Malacca and a search has been launched. However," they said, "if the relevant items cannot be found, we will bear the responsibility this time. Then we'll take the responsibility. It's nothing more than an apology or even a fine." Does this amount of money matter to the companies like Goldman Sachs? This is a matter involving the chip industry. Compared with responsibility, I value this award. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1147. Latest website. On Wall Street, at the headquarters of Goldman Sachs, a comprehensive meeting is underway. This is a meeting about global high-end manufacturing investment, and also includes global economic research and judgment. Shi Watanabe attended this meeting as the head of strategic investment in the Asia-Pacific region of Goldman Sachs. At the meeting, Shi Watanabe evaluated Fuzhou and the high-end manufacturing of many Chinese countries. He believed that Fuzhou is still the strongest in the field of high-end manufacturing. The opponent is China, but there is only one company in China, GFN Group. Fuzhou has formed an industrial cluster. It is impossible to suppress it in the short term. It is much easier to suppress GFN Electronics. At the meeting, they said that they learned through some news that GFN had smuggled a batch of photolithography machines from Europe. Now it should have been intercepted. GFN Group has made significant investments in mobile phones. These are the reasons that support their continued rapid progress towards high-end manufacturing. I think we should focus on cracking down on their income in this area. These require the cooperation of relevant companies in Silicon Valley. GFN Group announced that it will go online this year for mobile phones. We still have no way of knowing where they get their communication chips. Watanabe stood in front of the curtain and said to the crowd, "As long as GFN's mobile phone business layout is broken, Schroeder's group will not continue to support him. Everything will fall apart." There were big bosses from all walks of life sitting in the audience. They were not interested in the small GFN Group at all. Only the heads of Merrill Lynch and Morgan companies were whispering to each other, expressing curiosity that GFN was still alive and well. Lambert sat expressionless in the audience. Lu Feng's ability to dance so joyfully made Wall Street look bad. Although GFN is struggling under various blockades, he is still looking for opportunities in mobile phones. Soros sat next to Lambert, flipping through the folder in his hand, and whispered to Lambert next to him, "I heard some very important news, do you want to hear it?" "You mean, the Fed is raising interest rates?" Lambert asked. "I didn't expect you to know that as long as the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, the global dollar will flow back, and many countries in Asia will have weak foreign exchange reserves. In addition, some countries will have industrial hollowing out, depend on imported raw materials, and have their currencies anchored to the US dollar. There are other issues here. There is a lot of money, and my fund is ready to do something big." Soros asked, "Are you interested?" Lambert glanced at Soros, and he knew that it was not just about making money, but also a lot of things. On the contrary, making money was insignificant. "After all, I am a member of the Goldman Sachs Group, and I don't want to get too close to these people. Besides, if I really want to trigger an Asian financial tsunami, I will become a thorn in the eyes of Asian countries in the future. It is better to do less of this kind of thing. I'd better do what I'm doing." Lambert looked forward and said no more. In China, although Fang Fang was embarrassed that day, she still didn't take it seriously. The matchmaker worked hard to bring the match together. Before any progress was made, she revealed the 88,080 yuan gift, which made Fang Fang's family happy. Tip of brow. Even though Lu Feng was not very happy, he couldn't bear the constant bullying at home, so he finally drove to Fang Fang's house carrying large and small bags. On the way, the matchmaker sat in the passenger seat and told Lu Feng, you must learn to speak when you go, everything is exaggerated, who knows how much money you have, and they don't count your assets, you know. I know, I must have exaggerated, Lu Feng said angrily. The matchmaker could see that he was in a mood and said, the man that day was the one I went on a blind date with before. This girl was very popular. Fang Fang even said she didn't want to anymore, and she still kept chasing her. She even bought Santana to chase Fang Fang. Lu Feng didn't even want to answer the question. The 5-hand Santana that day seemed to be one of the first batch to enter the domestic market. It might as well be a 125 motorcycle. After leaving the county town, I walked toward the village for a few minutes. As soon as I entered the village, I saw a group of women standing at the door of the supply and marketing cooperative. When they saw a small bridge car approaching, they all stared at it with wide eyes, talking about whose family it belonged to. Son-in-law. The matchmaker pointed to the road for a long time and parked the car at the entrance of a slightly dilapidated yard. Before he could get out of the car, he heard the barking of dogs inside. A man in his 40s came out. He was slightly short in stature. He was wearing a light blue jacket that had turned white after washing, and a Benson hat on his head. He looked around the car. He smiled and said, "This is the Lu Feng, right?" "Yes, the young man is very nice." The matchmaker quickly got out of the car and praised him. "Everything has been arranged at home, let's go inside." Lu Feng got out of the car and said a few polite words, took out the things from the trunk and walked home. Wang Erfang walked out of the house and took the things with a smile on his face. Several children ran out of the house and stared at Lu Feng with wide eyes. After wandering around, Wang Erfang saw this and said hurriedly, "I haven't given my uncle's family a New Year's greeting yet." "Happy New Year, uncle. 100 or 200 is never too little." 4 or 5 little guys stretched out their hands to ask for red envelopes as if they had been rehearsed in advance. Before Lu Feng could think of how to respond, a few more people came out of the room. They repeated the words they just said, and they all opened their eyes wide and waited to ask for money. "Happy New Year, Happy New Year," Lu Feng looked at the group of children. If one person received a big red envelope, not to mention ordinary people, even the richest people in the county would have to shed their skin. It's okay if you want red envelopes, but there is a premise, that is, I have to see if you are studying well. Lu Feng found the reason and said to the children, "Go inside first, and I will see how your midterm exam scores are in a while." Sample. When they heard that they were going to ask about their grades, a few of them who were timid immediately withered. The remaining few who were not well educated kept clamoring for red envelopes. Lu Feng didn't pay much attention and stepped into the room. Wang Erfang's home is an ordinary one, with 3 mud houses. The floor of the house, not to mention ceramic tiles, is not even paved with red bricks. It is still rammed earth. When you enter, there are 2 large granaries with a pile of grain next to them. In the back room, there is a large kong. Opposite are 2 sets of old-fashioned red cabinets. After everyone was polite, Lu Feng and the matchmaker got on the kong. Wang Erfang's mother was a tall person. Although she was old and beautiful, it was obvious that Wang Erfang's beauty came mostly from her mother. Fang Fang's mother looked at Lu Feng. The children gathered together and seemed to be expecting red envelopes. Wang Erfang's mother said, "The food will be ready in a moment. You and Fang Fang's father have a drink at noon. This is not a good New Year's treat, so don't dislike it." "Just a homely meal," Lu Feng said politely. "The Chinese New Year is just for fun and celebration." "Children, did uncle give you red envelopes?" Fang Fang's mother asked her children. "No," a group of children shouted in unison. "Then you can't ask for it from others, you know." When Lu Feng heard this, he said, "It's the Chinese New Year. It's just for fun. Come on, if you want to get red envelopes, talk about your strength. Take out your papers and let me take a look. I'm telling you, uncle is rich. Well, whoever gets the first place in the school will get a big red envelope. Lu Feng raised the bar so high when he first came up, which frightened the children. They all found out their own papers and showed them to Lu Feng. Lu Feng knew very well what state the children in public schools were in now. Those in the city were better. The school in the village is basically no different from herding sheep. After looking for a long time, no one met the standard, so Lu Feng just gave him 10 yuan. But to them, this was already a very big red envelope. As the food was served, everyone got on the gong with polite greetings. After a bunch of firecrackers went off in the yard, the meal officially started. Fang Fang's father sat next to Lu Feng, urging him to drink from time to time. Asked, "I heard that you didn't make much money when you opened that factory in the south. In business, if you make money, you will lose it," Lu Feng replied casually. "If you get married to my Fang Fang, you still hope to come back here. Isn't your food factory very busy? It's okay, that's all. You should have a lot of connections in the local area, right? Do you know about Erlu in our city? That guy also runs a factory. He's been very prosperous in the past few years. He runs a ceramics factory. He has a lot of connections. Listen. Even the mayor has to give face. I'm not very familiar with the city." Lu Feng continued to fool around. Although Fang Fang's father was a farmer, he had also heard a lot about the world. Speaking of so many influential figures, Lu Feng didn't know any of them, which made him murmur in his heart. The matchmaker also heard what Lao Wang meant, and hurriedly nudged him with his leg to remind him of what he had been told on the way here. Lu Feng turned around and glanced at the matchmaker, and realized what he had done in his heart. "Ahem, have a drink." Lu Feng picked up the wine glass, clinked it with Fang Fang's father, took a mouthful of cold food and said, "Those people you just mentioned are too bad. Let me tell you this, in the city I don't look down on it at all, don't even think about me opening a factory, I'm doing serious business in the south, it's a big deal." "Aren't you talking about losing money?" Fang Fang's mother asked hurriedly. "Losing money doesn't mean it's small. I have factories in Guangzhou, Suzhou, and Shenzhen, and I have our /U0026D centers all over the world. Not to mention the city, even if the province calls me for a meeting, I have to be polite." Lu Feng simply stopped pretending, leaned back and said, "Mainly making home appliances, such as televisions, electric fans, and the like. I haven't paid much attention to the industry here in recent years. The main reason is that GMA food is not worth much. GMA food is not worth a lot of money. It is estimated to be only a few $100 million in general terms now. Why should I spend this little money? This year, I will mainly make mobile phones and high-end electronics, compete with the Americans, and participate in the global high-end electronics industry. Go in." After Lu Feng finished speaking, this small northern farmhouse became silent, and the cold wind raging outside stopped, as if he was shocked by the words in Lu Feng's mouth. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1148. Latest website. There was silence in the house. After a long while, Fang Fang's parents laughed awkwardly. They didn't understand what Lu Feng said at all. In their eyes, no matter how powerful they are in the world, they are only the leaders of the county. You have no idea if you go to them. As for private enterprises, they think that the most profitable ones are to open factories. As for what Lu Feng said, they don't understand at all. Fang Fang's father asked Fang Fang in a low voice, "Do you understand what he said?" Fang Fang shook her head in embarrassment. "How should I put it? I could understand every word, but I couldn't understand them all together." The matchmaker hurriedly smoothed things over and told everyone that Lu Feng was promising. Not to mention the 8 villages within 10 miles, even the leaders in the county and city had to give some face when they met. As long as they became a family, no one in the village would dare to Fang Fang's family. Bully, if any benefits come to the village, his family will definitely have a share. Lu Feng smiled after hearing this and didn't know what to say. Maybe this is the understanding between people. In Lu Feng's eyes, those powerful people or things are not as good as the benefits given by the village chief. After all, no matter how powerful the United States is, it is still on the other side of the ocean, and it is not as practical as being respected in the village. Seeing that Lu Feng was not good at bragging, the matchmaker could only help him in the battle. During the dinner, he boasted, "You know that black guy from Diego's village? He is now the village chief. Let me tell you, in the township, in the county, that black guy, they are all well-known people. Something was not settled some time ago, so I asked someone to find connections and find Lu Feng. Lu Feng was not easy to refuse, so he invited several directors to have a meal together and help him handle the matter." Fang Fang's father almost lost his eyes when he heard this and laughed. The more he looked at Lu Feng, the more he liked him. The older he gets, the older he gets. It's all trivial matters to follow the popular and spicy food in his family. I met Hiza once the year before last. He was really capable. I heard he had a sheep farm. The investment was huge, and the boss outside gave him money to open it, Fang Fang's father said while smoking a cigarette. No matter who you are, if you want to hang out in this area, you have to give others face, the matchmaker said from the side. The Lu Feng family wants to develop in a big city. Otherwise, there will be hundreds of miles around, and there will be no one else. It has the final say. This kid is reliable, and you can rest assured about the person I introduce. As long as the two of them get married, they will live in a small Western-style house, sit in Santana, and live a life where they will never eat steamed buns if they have them. The married life described by the matchmaker to Fang Fang's family is simply the life of an ordinary rich man in the countryside. He rides in a car, lives in a bungalow, watches a big color TV, goes out to restaurants at every turn, has air conditioning in the summer, can wear mink in the winter, and has people to fawn over when he returns to the village. Become friends with leaders in the city. Lu Feng sat there and wanted to laugh. Maybe this was the ceiling they could imagine for the rich, but then he thought again, such family conditions, not to mention now, would be the first choice for rural girls to get married more than 20 years later. As for everything he has now, it is beyond the concept of ordinary people and cannot be imagined by ordinary people. After almost eating, Lu Feng got up to say goodbye and left. Fang Fang sent it out. Standing at the entrance of the alley, people passed by from time to time and asked if this car was for his son-in-law. Fang Fang responded with a few shy words without confirming. But that state is not a kind of recognition. Get in the car, Fang Fang. I asked Lu Feng to pick you up on the first day of the new year. Now that I know where your home is, it will be easy to get back and forth, the matchmaker said politely. Lu Feng looked at the girl in front of him. She was simple and powerful. She was simple because she really didn't have much knowledge. Everything was written on her face. Compared to Su Yorong and others, she was really simple. But the power is really powerful, and he wants to hold everything in his arms within the scope of his imagination. I have something to tell you, and I won't hide it. We belong to two different worlds. You are a small town girl, and I am a wealthy capitalist. This is not to say I look down on you, but there is a huge difference between us. Different cognitions and concepts. It's not that you are not good enough. I believe that within a few hundred miles, you are absolutely popular. But my world is the entire Earth. There is a saying that we are equally matched. This sounds quite futile. Yes, but sometimes it makes sense, Lu Feng said towards Fang Fang. When Fang Fang heard this, she immediately became anxious and said hurriedly, if you think there is something wrong with me, just tell me, I will change it and I will learn from it. If your business becomes big, I can also learn to do business. Besides, she looks so beautiful. Being beautiful is an advantage. When combined with any first place, it is the best. The problem is, you have to have a first place. Well, the weather is quite cold, so I won't say much. The young man that day was pretty good. You should think about it carefully. I'll go back first, after Lu Feng said. He took a taxi and opened the door and got in the car. Do you think that person is pestering me? I am innocent, Fang Fang explained hurriedly. Lu Feng looked at her and said nothing more. He started the car and sped away. Along the way, the matchmaker explained the man. Lu Feng really didn't want to say anything more. Everything seemed meaningless. When they got home, the matchmaker knew that Lu Feng didn't listen to her, so she hurriedly went to talk to Lu Feng's parents. The three of them chatted for a long time. After sending the matchmaker away, Lu Feng's parents entered Lu Feng's house with some cakes. Xiao Feng, I heard that you are not satisfied with this Fang Fang. I heard that the girl is very beautiful. What do you think, Mom? Asked Lu Feng. Lu Feng nodded and said, life is not about looking at your face. You are busy outside, so you need someone to take care of you. Besides, you will be older in a few years. Where can you find someone suitable? Mom said earnestly, and she used her rural thinking to help Lu Feng analyze the pros and cons. Listening to her words, Lu Feng seemed to instantly understand the difference between young people and their parents many years later. Parents regard the best choice in their own minds as the best destination for their children, just like visiting the homes of the older generation. They give you glutinous rice sticks and plain baked cakes. This is the best thing in their knowledge, but young people have already had a broader vision. They not only know about cream cakes, but also macaron desserts. Neither side is wrong, but they are always arguing. When they have different perceptions, both sides always get the same answer. Lu Feng was helpless in the face of his parents' persuasion. He could only fool around and say that he would have a look again. Of course his parents knew that he was just delaying and tried to persuade him again. Mom, I have money now. Let me tell you this. It's not a problem to marry a foreign beauty, let alone a beauty from our county, Lu Feng said a little irritably. The two of them could see Lu Feng's impatience and didn't know what to say. The snow in the north is always so difficult to melt. A heavy snowfall a few days ago still decorates this small town so white. New Year's Eve is here in a hurry. The sound of firecrackers pulled people out of their dreams. Children wearing new clothes were everywhere on the streets. The year of the rat arrived as promised, and Lu Feng also put on new clothes, but he was not as excited as others. The TV at home can only search CCTV and city and county TV stations, and local stations broadcast various congratulatory advertisements, which is quite boring. For many people, such days are the best for playing cards, and various gambling activities will flourish everywhere. They have saved all their money for a year and want to lose it all in a few days. And Lu Feng didn't know anyone. He was like a young man returning to the village after more than 20 years. For him, this was an isolated island among people. As night falls, the sounds of various firecrackers are heard endlessly. I eat dumplings in the evening and half lie on the kong, watching TV with nothing to do. As the host comes out in a festive look, at this moment, children all over the land are rejoicing, but adults they all lament that another year has passed. Time is like the wheels of a car, it only spins faster and faster. This year is different from previous years. The host added a link to read advertisements. Ni Ping said to the camera, when it comes to the development of technology, we have to mention mobile phones. Jiaxun mobile phones have free calls, affordable prices, and good signals. The words free calls firmly caught people's attention, but Lu Feng didn't care much. He felt like looking back when watching the Spring Festival Gala. This year's Spring Festival Gala not only included Pan Changjiang's classic Crossing the River, but also there is teacher Zhao Lirong's masterpiece The Adventures of Working. When the familiar line 180 glasses of Palace Jade wine appeared, Lu Feng couldn't help but smile. Not knowing what time it was, Lu Feng fell into a deep sleep. The future and the present were intertwined in his dreams. He had had this dream countless times. When he woke up, it was already the first day of the new year. This year Fang Fang's family was not having a good time. They asked a matchmaker to call them at 10 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day. If it was not convenient for Lu Feng to pick them up, they could come by car themselves. Before Lu Feng could refuse, at 10:30, the family of 3 had already arrived at the door of the house. Lu Feng's parents naturally received them warmly. It seemed that everyone was happy except Lu Feng, who was not happy. Fang Fang dressed up in the room, wearing a grey coat, her hair was permed again, and she tidied it up overnight. She was still a flower in this 18th-tier small city. Lu Feng washed his face after being called down and just saying a few polite words. There was a knock on the door, and then a man in his 20s ran in angrily. "Who is it?" "It's Chinese New Year," Lu Feng's father looked outside. Lu Feng glanced around and saw that the person coming was the man driving a Santana. Fang Fang saw that the man's expression suddenly changed and he said, "Maybe he's looking for me. I'll go there." The man stood in the yard and shouted, "Let me find a place, right? Wang Fang, who do you think I am? Now that I have found a rich family, you will ignore me? There is no door. If I don't live well this year, no one can have a good time." Wang Fang's parents looked extremely ugly. They stood up and were about to go out to chase people away. Seeing this, Lu Feng said, "It's okay. Let him come in during the Chinese New Year. Everyone who comes is a guest." "What's going on?" Lu Feng's mother looked at the matchmaker. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1149. Latest website. When Fang Fang's parents saw the man, their expressions suddenly turned ugly. Fang Fang's father went out and scolded, "Are you done yet? Are you still trying to marry my Fang Fang? Why don't you pee and take a look at yourself? Give it to me right now, get out. I pee and take pictures." "You know what your daughter is," the man said without giving in, "we are about to get engaged. Isn't it because I can't afford Santana? Your family is in trouble. Hard." As soon as these words came out, Fang Fang's mother couldn't sit still, and rushed out of the door to curse. Suddenly, there were quarrels in the yard, and the scene was particularly embarrassing. Lu Feng's parents stood at the door of the house and stared at the matchmaker, almost eating him. It was a Chinese New Year. "The neighbors will not laugh at you if you come here like this." The scene became more and more noisy. Fang Fang ran out crying and persuaded the man to stop arguing and leave quickly if it was really for her own good. "You're fine, what should I do? What do you think of me? What do you think of my family? After more than half a year of hard work, our family has spent so much money, and you just want me to leave," the man said with a sinister expression. "If you don't give me an explanation today, no one will think about it." Seeing that things couldn't be settled, Lu Feng said, "Okay, stop arguing. Besides, the weather is so cold, and outside is not a place to quarrel. Can't we go inside and quarrel? Brother, can we go inside, it's quite cold." Lu Feng's mother heard from the side that her son was quite polite to others. She patted Lu Feng with her hand and winked hurriedly. Why did he enter the house? The man thought that Lu Feng was asking him to come into the house. He stiffened his neck and said angrily, "Come in the house as soon as you come in. What can you do to me? If I have any trouble in your house today, I will blackmail you to death." After entering the room, Lu Feng poured the man a glass of hot water, smoked a cigarette, and asked sincerely, "What do you call him?" Wang Dong, the man said angrily. You look younger than me, are you two the same thing? Lu Feng asked curiously. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just messing around. Didn't the matchmaker tell you before? Fang Fang's mother said hurriedly. Let him say it. It's better to dissolve enemies than to make enemies. Lu Feng thought to himself that he had nothing to do anyway, so he was just watching the fun. According to Wang Dong, they were not introduced to each other by a matchmaker. The two have known each other for more than half a year. They have been to Fang Fang's house several times and are about to get engaged. They were all good to each other at first, but unexpectedly she suddenly changed and wanted to marry her. Santana, if you don't have it, you won't get married, and she makes demands at every level. The two had an argument that night and broke up. The next day, he tried to get a Santana. Unexpectedly, he met Lu Feng and Fang Fang shopping for clothes at the market. During this period, Fang Fang's parents kept calling him nonsense, and the matchmaker was also making noise. Lu Feng acted as the peacemaker instead, and the situation was slightly embarrassing. You don't need to be pretentious here. How can a few stinky rich people be so big? Wang Dongchao shouted at Lu Feng. I'm telling you, I'm not easy to mess with. Who doesn't know a few rich people? Wang Erfang, you look down on me. Mr. Lu, you look down on me too, don't you? Aren't you just sitting here chatting? I didn't say I looked down on you. Lu Feng looked at him and said speechlessly. Wang Dong seemed particularly excited. He pointed his finger at everyone present and shouted, I tell you, for 30 years from Hedong to 30 years from Hexi, don't bully young people into poverty. One day, I will be developed and rich. Who do you think you are? Seeing him swearing in anger, Lu Feng hurriedly said, Brother, listen to my advice, you don't count me among these people, and there will be a day when you will count me in, but that day will never happen. Wang Dong just came to make trouble and vent his emotions. He could see that Wang Erfang had decided not to follow him, so he didn't want anyone else's face. The person who made him the most angry was Lu Feng. This man was sitting there smoking slowly, not angry at all, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. In the urban area, Gao Jiwei got off the plane half an hour ago and took a car straight to the county. In the car, Gao Jiwei asked the driver, Is Mr. Lu not leaving yet? Mr. Gao, I really don't know, the driver said helplessly. What do you know? Didn't I tell you that I asked you to be Mr. Lu's driver? Leave the car and go home for the new year, Gao Jiwei scolded. They don't let me be a driver, the driver said helplessly. Gao Jiwei didn't want to say anything more. He just closed his eyes and rested in his seat. He ran out of home on the first day of the new year. The last time Lu Feng improved the products, GMA Foods completely gained a foothold in the industry. This time Gao Jiwei has something else. GMA Food has developed to this day and has several of its own flagship products. Gao Jiwei wants to expand production. He knows that GFN Group is very rich now. This time, he hopes that Lu Feng can increase his holdings of some shares in exchange for cash flow to develop the company. Or work with GFN Group to help it go overseas. If neither method works, then seek to go public. The car sped into the county and headed towards Lu Feng's house. Wang Dong stopped covering up. He came today just to slap the faces of the people in front of him. He stood up and stared at Wang Erfang and said solemnly, You just look at the money. I came today just to show you. I don't either, you are all hopeless people. I tell you, I have these brothers for a long time, you are not worthy of carrying my shoes. Come out. He said this and left the house, as if he wanted to give everyone a big surprise. Lu Feng was the first to follow him out, and then others followed him out of fear of making a move. At the gate of the Lu family, 7 or 8 cars had parked at some point, blocking the entire alley. Wang Dong walked out of the gate, and there were 7 or 8 men smoking cigarettes standing outside, staring at Lu Feng coldly. Look, Wang Dong shouted to everyone, I have no strength now, but my brother has strength. Now he looks down on me. In time, even if you look at me with your neck broken, I won't even bother to look at you. This scene was quite embarrassing for the Chinese New Year. It was the first time Lu Feng had seen him prove his strength in this way. The man standing at the front had a cigarette in his mouth and took a step forward. You look down on my brother, don't you? That means you look down on me. Do you know who I am? Me. Su Lang, go out and ask about Lang, it's loud. Me. Zhao Xiyan. Me. Lu Bawan. Me. Li Mouse. As these famous names rang out, a look of pride appeared on Wang Dong's face. He just wanted to make Wang Erfang regret it. He just wanted to see their family in pain, give up on himself, and choose this person who might be slightly better than him. An old man who has lost his future. What is a potential stock? What is the explosive power of young people? He believed that not to mention 30 years, but at most 3 years, the wealth contained in his body would be as unstoppable as the water of the Yellow River. Wang Erfang's family didn't know that Wang Dong, an ordinary-looking guy, actually knew so many people who drove Santana. They had heard the names of several of them. They were all doing business in the city. Among them, the name Su Lang, the loudest one, is that the furniture mall in the center of the county is opened by his family. Everyone smokes a cigarette on a cold day. I still say the same thing. No one can force feelings, Lu Feng said, and let everyone disperse the cigarettes. Don't get too close to me. Wang Dong knocked Lu Feng's hand to the ground. There were so many cars blocked in the alley that all the neighbors came out to see what was going on. In a short while, it was already crowded. Lu Feng looked at the knocked-out cigarette and was not angry. He looked at Wang Dong and asked, "What result do you want? What result do you want from such a big battle? I just want to tell you that I am no worse than anyone else. It's not that Wang Erfang doesn't want me, it's that I despise her," Wang Dong shouted angrily. Lu Feng glanced at Wang Erfang. The faces of Wang Erfang's family were extremely ugly. Lu Feng originally wanted to say something, but I didn't pay attention to it, so he didn't say it. Just as I was about to say a few words of persuasion, someone shouted at the entrance of the alley, "Why are there so many traffic jams? Move the car." Su Lang scolded without looking back, "Are you blind? Didn't you see me dealing with things here? Get out of the way. If you make me angry, your car will be damaged." Gao Jiwei couldn't wait any longer. He strode towards the side and saw a large number of people gathered at the door. He glanced at the crowd and fixed on Su Lang. He said, "You want to give it to me?" The car was smashed. Su Lang turned around and was stunned when he saw Gao Jiwei, and said in surprise, "Uncle Gao. Why are you here? Why am I here? I also want to ask you, why are you here?" Gao Jiwei glanced at Lu Feng and wondered, "Did your dad ask you to give gifts to Mr. Lu?" "Mr. Lu? Where did Mr. Lu come from?" Su Lang was a little confused. Several of the young men present felt that something was not right. They might have run into trouble. They were just young men from some small factories or large self-employed businesses in the county or city. "Do you know him?" Lu Feng asked. "There is a furniture store in the county, and I have eaten with his father several times." Gao Jiwei also helped introduce him and said, "This is Mr. Lu, your Uncle Lu. Doesn't your dad want to meet a big shot? This is a great person, it's definitely big enough." In Su Lang's eyes, Gao Jiwei is already a big shot. The company is headquartered in the capital, and he knows all kinds of people. His father always wants to curry favor with others. Now this young man in front of him, who looks not much older than him, is actually a big shot. A big shot in your eyes? As for Wang Dong's original expression of pride in not bullying the young man's poverty, it has now disappeared without a trace, leaving him standing there with a confused look on his face. Lu Feng really didn't want to make trouble with them. He was just about to let them go home when it wasn't warm outside when his cell phone, which had been silent in his pocket, suddenly rang. He took out his cell phone and answered the call. "Who is this?" "Mr. Liu, I have called you on your mobile phone." "Something happened." Wei Yanden's urgent voice came from the other end of the phone. "While our lithography machine was being transported by sea, it was intercepted and detained by us maritime personnel in the Strait of Malacca." "What?" Lu Feng's voice rose several dozen decibels. When everyone present saw Lu Feng being so excited, they were also wondering what happened. He had been smiling from the time he made a fuss in the morning to now. They didn't know what could make him react so much. Latest website.